Alrighty, we are into episode 2 of the Walk Toward the Fire podcast. It is me, your host, Mark Fitzgerald, and I am glad to be here. Why not? So, the last episode we talked about the power of imagination, and if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to go and do that, because I'm going to try to build on these ideas, so it's going to be layer upon layer upon layer. So we discussed briefly the power of imagination and how our brain and our consciousness essentially is like it's a hub, it's a filter for reality, and we choose what we focus on, and we choose how we see the world in many ways. But I want to talk about the power of solidarity. So solidarity is obviously that feeling of not being alone, of companionship, of brotherhood, of we're all in this together, kind of solidarity. We are standing arm in arm, hand in hand. And solidarity can be a wonderful thing. I think there's almost a tension with humanity where we want the truth, but we don't want to be alone. And I think sometimes we make these compromises where we'll put ourselves in these echo chambers and find solidarity because it feels good. It's an easy, quick fix. And, we surround ourselves with people who agree with us and distance ourselves from those that don't. And that's where solidarity can take us down some interesting, maybe dark pathways. So, yeah, I think the beautiful thing about solidarity is you could be in an argument with somebody, you could be talking about politics, you could be talking about religion, all the subjects you're not supposed to talk about. And the moment you find common ground, and it's usually through pain. Pain, as it's been said, has a way of making us more honest. Pain has a way of opening us up. And when we choose to become vulnerable and speak about our pain, we can find solidarity and connection with people in very deep and profound ways. And again, we run a risk of rejection, of all kinds of more pain. So, again, we live in this tension where we have to make choices about what we do. And I suppose the question around the solidarity idea is, who do we find solidarity with right now? Who do we connect with? Who are the people we find ourselves lining up with? And why? Why do we find common ground with those people? Are we just in an echo chamber telling people they're stupid and telling people they're wrong? Or are we opening up interesting, compelling conversations? So yeah. It's a tough one. I guess the strange thing I think happens, especially in the online world, where we get so caught up in wanting to be on the right side or whatever, that we can say and do things that are just crazy. Like we stop. We talk so much about critical thinking, and we get so caught up in these echo chambers sometimes that we stop being critical about our own worldview. We stop being critical about our own beliefs and our own convictions, and that can be crazy. I mean, I don't know about you, but have you ever? I know I have, but have you ever found yourself in a conversation or an argument, and you get so far down this track that you're finding yourself defending a position that you don't even hold, all in the name of towing the line or being right? Sometimes, ego is another one. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on ego. But I'll just keep this one short today because it's a pretty simple idea, the solidarity. I don't know how much more you can really say about it, but I think the human impulse for solidarity and for connection is it runs pretty deep, and yeah, you see it in in all kinds of places. We ask these weird questions like, "What's everyone else doing? What's normal?" And I want to tie this a little bit to Andrew Breitbart, because I will mention him from time to time, as this podcast was inspired by his epic quote about walking toward the fire. But again, he was somebody who did carve out a new path, and I think sometimes you've got to walk away from the idea of solidarity and go your own way, and create a new path and invite others to join you. Sometimes you will be a pioneer and you will be speaking about new ideas that other people aren't speaking about, and it's not popular. I'm reminded of what Milo said to me, quite frankly, in his conversation, where he said, I asked him about the sincerity of what he does. I said, it's obvious to me you're having fun and doing what you do, mocking all these feminists and social justice warriors and whatnot. And I said, but there seems to be a level of sincerity to me in what you do. And I said, when you hear him speak about issues like the male suicide epidemic, for example, and man, that's, there's some space for solidarity in that conversation. And, he said to me, he goes, yeah, I was, he goes, that's why I was in the wilderness for a number of years, being very unpopular. And I think that's part of the deal. I think that for us to create new conversations, we need pioneers as well. Like, we need to find solidarity, but we also need to carve out a new path, and that requires asking new questions and seeing with new eyes, So just to wrap things up, I just came across, this is an excerpt from a novel by an author named Susan Howich, and the novel is called Absolute Truths. And it's a story, I believe, if I understand the context of this narrative conversation, it's a priest essentially lamenting the loss of his wife. And he's talking to somebody, a character in the book, I'm not sure exactly who, but this is their dialogue, and it sort of ties into the idea of solidarity. So he says, after Lyle, that's his wife, so he says, after Lyle died, I hit the scotch. Did you, Charles? Did you really? But how hard did you hit it? Hard enough to be hungover. How wonderfully reassuring. But of course, you then pulled yourself together and behaved like a paragon? Not quite. Honestly, in that case, perhaps I can feel a little less disgusted with myself that I didn't behave like a paragon at all when I finally emerged from Banbury. Difficult to get back to normal. Crucifying, I was so bloody lonely that I was even tempted to head for a red light district. I'm sorry how sordid that sounds. No need to apologize. Anyway, in the end, I resisted the red light and jumped in bed with an old friend instead. I'm sure you must find it quite incomprehensible that I should have done such a thing. Not at all. And I wish to hell now that I had abstained, but because it turned out to be a damned fool thing to do, and there's bound to be an unpleasant scene waiting for me. God, isn't life bloody sometimes? Yes. Are you just saying that to be nice to me? No. Thank God. Lord, this is a damned odd conversation to be having with a bishop. Excuse me while I just pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming. It's no dream. Good to meet someone who's been through hell. It's no dream. Good to meet someone who's gone through hell lately. Isn't it wonderful? It makes all the difference to know there's someone else alongside you. Sorry, I'll start that again. Isn't it wonderful? It makes all the difference to know there's someone else screaming alongside you. And that's the point of the incarnation. I can see that so clearly now, that God came into the world and screamed alongside of us. So there's some thoughts on solidarity. And so go scream alongside someone. find someone who is in pain and go be with them. And actually, just a final thought. One final thought. Not Tommy Lauren or anything. Final thoughts. Oh, my Twitter's going crazy. No, there is a Jewish custom called sitting shiva, and it's essentially it's essentially there to address the problem of pain and suffering and grief. And basically, it was a command that was built into the culture where if somebody was suffering or somebody had just lost somebody and they were grieving, you were commanded to be silent. You would just go sit with them and just be with them. And if they wanted to talk, you would talk, like if they were open. But if they just had nothing to say, you would just be there. You would just hold their hand or you would just sit with them and be silent. And what it did essentially was it took away all the pressure of, oh, what do I say? How do I fix this? You know? Because we live in this like fix-it generation. We live in this world where we just want to fix things and instantly respond instead of just pausing, you know. So that's where I think I'll leave it today. There's some thoughts on solidarity.